Greetings, HD students. So happy chapter number 13. So let's wrap up talking about middle childhood or the elementary school years and talking about what's going on emotionally and psychologically with our 6 to 11-year-olds. All right. So during this time, kids are starting to break away from mom, dad, guardian, whoever that be. They want to be independent, right? So they may not always tell you everything. They want to exercise this self-control of their own. So they don't want you, guardian or parent, to be involved in everything they do. Like looking at this picture here, how embarrassing would it be if I said to my son or daughter, let mommy get in the middle and join you and your friends and jump in the pool together, right? Because it's not my place. This is your child having fun with their friends, and you need to step back. And so parents, this is just going to be, for some of you, it might be a real issue because you're having some separation anxiety of your own, letting your kids age and grow up. But this is a normal developmental process, right? And again, as we're going to see here, this is a time where kids start to do things without your awareness or approval. And that's why I would say it is so important that you have a healthy relationship built on trust and great deal of communication. Because if you have that, then it really minimizes what your kids are going to keep from you. I've had my kids come back later in time and say, you know, Mom, when I said this, I actually did this, or I feel bad about it, I feel guilty, you know, because we've built this relationship of trust. And so I think that if you have that, then your kids are not always looking to sneak off and do things you don't approve of. If there are things that they think are unfair, they should have a voice to tell you respectfully, in a respectful manner, why they think it's unfair. All right, so again, just expect them to be kind of doing this. All right, and this is, unfortunately, this is a time that our kids start to learn about the haves and the have-nots. So in other words, what happens is kids go into elementary school, and then they start to figure out, oh, boy, that kid has all these cool shoes and nice clothes, and they go places, and gee, I don't have any of that. Like, I guess I'm poor. Right? Kids really don't understand that until they start to compare themselves to other kids in their own age group and in their own setting, right? I really didn't know I was poor growing up until I got into school. And I remember a few years in, I kind of realized that my mom sewed all of my clothes. And I kind of thought, man, I really wish I had, like the girls were talking about, a dress from JCPenney or an outfit from JCPenney. Really wish I had an outfit from the store, right? And now looking back, I regret that feeling because my mom used to sew my Barbie clothes and she sewed everything for me, which was a wonderful way of, again, we were poor, we didn't have money, but it was also a very considerate action for her to make my Barbie's dresses and things like that. But kids get in here and they start socially comparing each other. And unfortunately, this is when they start to feel like maybe they're not as well off as someone else or worthy as someone else. So that social comparison, materialism really kicks in, right? I remember my son was in the 5th grade when he came home and says, Mom, I need some new socks. Mom, I need those socks. I'm like, oh, really? We need some new socks? Okay. He says, yeah, Mom, I need the socks, you know, that have that swishy thing on them. Yeah, have that little swish on them. I'm like, why do we need to get Nike socks? Because all the kids have Nike socks. So it's embarrassing, like, if I don't have the Nike socks. That's what we're talking about. Why is there that there's this need to wear designer or certain things? Of course, as a single mom, I said, honey, unless they're on sale at Ross, we're not going to go pay $25 for a pair of socks, right? You have to set some boundaries, and your kids have to learn how to deal with that, right? They should learn that we can't always do everything we want to do. Self-esteem, unfortunately, again, it decreases during this time. Well, think about it. Elementary school, this should be a time your child is just, gosh, making lots of friends, having lots of playtime. They're learning more about themselves, writing, and all these different things, and they should be feeling good about themselves. However, this self-esteem goes down. And a lot of that, again, is related to this social comparison. It's related to this feeling like, well, I'm not that popular. Boy, he has lots of friends, or man, he's so good at soccer and I can't do that, right? They compare themselves to other kids. We mentioned self-concept before. Self-concept is this idea that if you were to hold up a mirror and you were to look into the mirror in front of you, what you see is your self-concept. It's how you view yourself, not others. It's really how you view yourself. So it's based on, again, your intelligence, your personality, abilities, gender, your ethnic background. All of these things play into what you think about yourself. Right. So Erickson says this fourth stage of development, remember there's 8 stages total. This fourth stage that we all go through is what we call industry versus inferiority. And what it really means is industry means being productive or accomplishing tasks, right? So think of kids in elementary school. Remember I said 3rd grade, we learn our math facts. And so if they master those math facts, they feel good about themselves. If they don't, they feel kind of inferior or less than the other kids. It's kind of embarrassing to fail the math test, or when it comes your turn to say what is 8 times 7 and you don't know the answer, right? So you feel inferior. And so all kids are going through this stage, and so we need to, as parents, be helping them with their math facts and helping them to gain that sense of industry. Resilience. So the term resilience refers to our ability, or a person's ability, to adapt well to significant adversities and to overcome serious stressors. So it's kind of like when life throws stuff at you, ugly, yucky stuff, and you are able to get over it. Resilience really only happens, or we can only call someone resilient if they have faced troubles, right? In other words, somebody who is upper income and who comes from a very loving family or a very healthy environment, and they have not really experienced what it's like to be poor, what it's like to be hungry, what it's like to have parents that fight, what it's like to have just a single parent and have no role model, what it's like to have parents who never say a good word to you. They've never maybe experienced some of that abuse and trauma and those things, then they can't be resilient, because resilience is overcoming adversity. And so in the first place, you have to have adversity, right? So our students that are homeless or that, deal with what we call residential instability, they move from shelter to shelter, or they live with a relative and then they go to a shelter, or they're moving around because they don't have that stability, right? They are resilient though when they continue to persevere. Right. So coping measures, and how do we deal with some of the stressors that are placed on us in this age group, this 6 to 11? And a big stressor that we see in this age group would be divorce. We see a lot of our families, breaking up and going through divorce. And in that situation, we're going to talk about some of the ways that kids deal with that. So the term parentification basically means when your child acts like the parent. Right? So let me give you a couple of ways that this happens to kids. Number one, the way that this happens to kids would be, let's say that your family goes through a divorce and you have an 11-year-old girl and you have younger siblings. This girl has younger siblings. And what we see happen is mom and dad split up, dad gets a different place. We see the children go visit dad, and when they go visit dad, dad is not yet at a place to kind of manage the home like mom maybe used to do. And so what happens is you find the oldest child, the daughter, doing everything. She becomes the parent. And so she starts washing the dishes and doing the dishes and making a grocery list for dad. Let's go to the grocery store, dad. We need to get these things. Dad, don't forget, you're supposed to pick up Johnny at practice at 3 o'clock, dad. And don't forget, you had a teacher's meeting with so-and-so's teacher at this time. She's taking on roles that were typically mom's role. And so she becomes a parent because dad is not yet kind of into the new groove of being single and doing those things on his own. And so a lot of times we see that she feels responsible to take care of the younger siblings. That's one way that we see parentification. The second way that we see parentification, and this is what happened in my case, I was a parentified child, is when you come from low-income families, primarily immigrant families, that need to work a lot. So if mom and dad are working, sometimes 2 jobs, 3 jobs, or they're working all day, it may then be up to the oldest sibling to pick up siblings from school, to feed those siblings dinner, to make sure that they get their homework done. So what happens is that oldest child becomes this parentified child, not necessarily because mom and dad don't want to be doing that, as much as because mom and dad are trying to get you from low income to middle income. We're trying to provide so that we are not hungry, so that we're not going to the shelter. And so having to work that amount of time requires more assistance from the children and from the family. And so that's another way that we see parentification happen. And so neither one good, because I want your 11-year-old to act like 11. I do. I don't like it when I go places and I sometimes will see an older sibling, and if mom or dad is available, and yet I see mom and dad look at the older sibling kind of like, it's your job to watch your brother and sister. That's what you need to do doing. Because my take would be, no, not really. You had the child, right? So if you're the parents, that's your job to take care of all of your kids. Not that our siblings, our children shouldn't help each other. They should. But ultimately, it's your responsibility. And so I don't like to see kids do that, because I want them to just act 11. Don't have to act like you're 18, right? All right. And then what's something probably all of us understand is what we say is this kind of shared versus non-shared environment. For instance, do you have siblings? And if you have a brother or sister or siblings, and when you sit down together and you're talking about like an old family story, and you tell a story and your sibling says, man, I don't remember it that way. I remember dad doing this, right? How could the two of you be raised in the same home by the same parents, and yet you have different experiences? That's what we mean. We mean that your shared experiences are sometimes different from each other, the way that you remember. Or you feel like your sister was always the favorite, and she says, no, you were the favorite for sure, right? All of those different things. And so when we're living and raised with our family, like we see in this picture, we have these maybe some shared experiences. And then eventually we will go off to college or off to work and off to our own romantic relationships and developing those families. And those will be our non-shared experiences. In other words, we may not always share those with our siblings or parents. All right, so kids being raised in the same kind of home environment, as we just said, may not always feel like they experience the same things. And although if you ask most parents, do you love your children differently? Most parents will say to you, I love all my kids the same, right? I treat all my kids the same. However, we're really going to say that, that's probably not always correct, because we're human. And in many instances, we gravitate or we are drawn to one of our children more than others. In other words, and it could be that you have 3 kids and maybe one of those 3 is just so easygoing. They're so easy to please. They eat everything you put in front of them. They never argue back. Whenever you say, what do you want to do? They're like, whatever you want to do is fine. Right? They're so easygoing. Sometimes it's easy to make that your favorite child, if you will, because it's like easier to work with them. Others might be a little bit, their personalities are different. They require a little bit more work, right? Doesn't mean that we love them differently. However, we may probably treat them differently, right? And so I think we need to kind of be honest about that. Those experiences can happen. Today, we say that about 2/3 of our school-age kids live in a 2-parent family. And so if we know the divorce rate's about 50%, the reason that they live in a 2-parent family is because we have remarriage. So we have a lot of blended families. It's almost becoming much more of a norm to have divorced parents and blended families. And so 2/3 of our school-age kids already have a 2nd or 3rd family. All right, what do these terms refer to? Your nuclear family is your family of birth. So the family, mom, dad, my siblings, that's the family I was born into. Didn't have a choice about that, right? Your extended family, okay, would be those people beyond. So this would be, maybe aunts and uncles or things like that. People that, don't maybe live in your same household. So what can we do? Talk about the family function in middle childhood. So as a parent of a elementary school age kid, what should I be doing? Number one, we're making sure that our kids have what they need. That's safety and meeting the physiological or food and shelter and clothing. Those are our primary roles. as parents. So making sure that they have that doesn't mean they get all the designer clothes they want. Doesn't mean that, they have all of that, but it means they have the things they need, right? Encouraging learning. So definitely you are the one they want to please. And so you rewarding them or just praising them when they do well on a report card means the world, right? Help them to develop self-respect for themselves. This, I'll be honest, for me right now in my own life, my own family, it's sad because I feel like my youngest, who is 12, has just been going through a lot of issues with being not so much bullied as kids at school nowadays just say hurtful words. Yeah, they just say things that hurt other people and even don't respect themselves, right? And so teaching your child self-respect, affirming them, right? So that means that, if you have a child whose girls or boys are making fun of them because they're overweight or underweight, either one of those, then you doing what you need to do with helping them to be at a healthy weight, right? And then if that is their body size, whatever that be at a healthy weight, then you affirm that. Right? Nurturing friendship. So have the friends over, volunteer in their classroom. That's really important. They're proud of that when it's like, oh, my mom volunteered, or my mom brought treats for the class, or whatever, or my dad, forgive me, because dad's playing awesome. There's a lot of single dads out there playing a role of dad. And so, you can play these big roles in their life, in their school. You can encourage their friends to come over. You can encourage activities, right? I took my daughter and her girlfriends to see a play up in Sacramento because they wanted to see this particular play. And so just different things that allow that. Foster harmony and stability. So again, I'm going to say, if you have issues with your partner, by partner, I mean husband, wife, girlfriend, boyfriend, your significant other. If you have disputes, things of that nature, then you keep them private. You don't let your children hear that. Right, diverse family structures, as we can see here, lots of what the word family means has changed dramatically in the last 30 years. Dramatically, right? The nuclear family, meaning, biological mom, dad, siblings, the single parent family we have a lot of, right? Extended families, we don't see a lot of polygamous families here in California. All right, divorce. So unfortunately, the U.S. is a leader again in a particular area we would prefer not to be. Right? So the U.S. leads the world in the rate of divorce and remarriage. So research has shown us that children are most successful when they're raised by your two biological parents, or I should say adoptive parents, or the stable home that you had since childhood. And that provides a lot of structure, as long as it's a healthy relationship, right? So academically in all those ways. On average, divorce impairs children's academic achievement and their social or psychosocial development because there's a lot of fear. Children are afraid when their parents split up. They're afraid of losing one of the parents. And they shouldn't, because they deserve both of your love, even if you will not be together in a couple. So there's a lot of fears that go with that. Divorce affects these for years. So I'm a big believer in counseling. I'm a big believer in the positive benefits that speaking to a professional will help you with, because professionals are able to teach us coping strategies. So I feel angry or I feel upset about something. Your therapist or your counselor can talk to you about what are some techniques you can do when you feel that way. Because most of us, what happens is we feel that way and we don't know what to do. So then the emotion overwhelms us, whether that's depression, whether it's anger, whatever it be. And we need to learn how to deal with those. And your kids really need to learn that, because unlike you and I, they haven't even gained a glimpse into kind of how to be healthy yet emotionally. And so they need someone to direct them. And a lot of therapists do art therapy and different wonderful ways of getting kids to express themselves. But when they're going through this loss of the family unit through a divorce, they have some feelings about that. All right, so again, seeing here different family structures. What we know when it comes to our single parent families is this is a challenge. And I'm a single parent myself. I'm financially responsible for all of my kids in every way. And so it's hard sometimes. However, we need to learn that, if you are that other partner or the other parent, paying child support increases opportunities for successful outcomes. And this is research proven. So even if you are not going to be involved in the child's life for whatever reason, even if you've moved away or you have another family or you've just decided for whatever reason not to actually be emotionally connected or physically connected, you can still support them financially. And that will provide some opportunities that it is hard for us single parents to provide. All right, looking here at households with kids under the age of 18, and we're looking at ethnic groups here, right? So looking at these charts, we're looking at blue is the marrieds, yellow is the cohabitating or living together, green is the single moms, and purple is the single dads. And so looking here, we're looking at our Asian category groups having the highest percentage of married couples, although again, I hate the term Asian just because your experiences as a Laotian, someone from Laos or someone from Vietnam or someone from those areas is different from your experience from China or Japan, or different Asian countries have different experiences. So I don't like lumping them all into this term Asian. However, we see that placing high value on the committed marriage relationship. And then we look here at our cohabitating couples. It looks like our African American and Hispanic and Caucasian white families. And then our single moms, we're looking at African Americans having the largest percentage of single moms, with Hispanics being second. And then looking at our single dads, so we're looking at our Caucasian having the highest percentage of single dads, right? So, all right, so again, and then when we talk about the word family, as I said, that term has changed to really include adoptive and foster families, right? And then blended families. So our blended families would be, again, the families where we have typically two divorced or separated households who come together to put those children and put the parents together. And we need them to have a very solid relationship before they go into that, because it is a challenge to have a blended family. So here's what we know from research. Number one is that when we talk about marriage, we need to really talk about it with a lot of foresight and thought into it. So consider marriage commitments carefully. I always say I'm not a believer that because a couple conceives, in other words, if you and your partner find yourself pregnant, I don't believe you need to get married because you're having a baby, because it's actually worse for the child for you to be married for a short time and then divorced than for you never to have been married in the first place. So we don't go into these marriage commitments lightly at all. We should not. So going into that, particularly if you have children. So if you're a single parent or if you are from a divorced family, you need to think about how your child will feel about this possible remarriage, because it's not just about you. You're a parent, and now you have to think greatly about your child. Number two, we need to work at it. Marriage is work, and you might think, oh, it shouldn't be work. It should be effortless. Oh, you're lying. You're kidding yourself. It's not effortless. Positive, healthy relationships are not effortless. Now, we will talk about later when we talk about relationships how they can sometimes feel effortless because you've put in the foundation that it's so easy, and that's great, but it does take a commitment on our part. And if we do go through a divorce, so we want to minimize the changes our kids have to deal with. So for instance, I have, my daughter has a girlfriend from school whose parents are going through divorce. Actually, she has 3 at the same time whose parents are all going through divorce. And the mom is going to move her kids from that school. And her daughter's devastated that she's not coming back. And I would say that that's probably not maybe the healthiest for your child, because if her parents are already splitting up, she already has this loss and emotional fear and everything from what's going to happen in my future with my parents, right? Now you are removing her from the group of friends that she goes to, or that she's familiar with, or that she has, and you're asking her to start at a new school, make new friends, and that's hard. You're changing a little too much. And so my thing would be, if your family goes through that, try to keep your kids in the same school, try to keep them with the same friends so that they have some stability, since you are going to go through a time of instability, right? All right, and then another stressor here when we talk about two factors that increase the likelihood of dysfunction is going to be poverty, right? Being poor is not fun, right? That's for sure. It's not, and there's a lot of challenges that come with being from a low-income family. In addition, a stressor for our kids is going to be this parents fighting or arguing or having conflict. So although you think it's adult business, that's fine. My advice is if you are going to have it throw down with your partner, if you're going to go at it, if you're going to have a fight, whatever you want to call it, take it to the garage. Yeah, I think you put the kids to bed and you go to the garage. You yell out or do however you think you need to function. I would say yelling is not the best method, but go ahead and do what you need to do. But don't let your kids hear it, because just overhearing the raised voices is stressful. That is a stressor. Cortisol is, again, being released into their system because it's scary. When you hear the two people you love the most fighting, it scares you, and that's how they feel just overhearing that. Or even being mean to each other in front of the kids. All of that they pick up on very quickly. So these are, again, some stressors. So what do we know about in research as far as same-sex couples and families? What we know is they're pretty similar to heterosexual couples and families, right? So we see here this couple, same-sex couple and their children. Nowadays, again, to be a foster parent or an adoptive parent, you do not need to be a heterosexual couple. You may be a same-sex couple. You may be a single parent. Right? So you can be a single parent. You can be coming from a homosexual relationship, whatever it be. They will still do like the background check, and their question is whether your family will be together in 5 years, because ideally that's what's best for the kids. But what we're seeing is that basically same-sex couples function very similar to opposite-sex couples. Now, again, we don't have a great deal of long-term research because we're still following these families, because it's really only been in more recent, decade or so that we have been having same-sex couples adopt kids and foster kids and do all of those different things. All right, so friendships in school. So your kids are going to have some really, start to develop where their friends become really important during these elementary school years. They tend to choose their friends, again, who I say look like them. They're similar to them in these different ways, according to sex, race, and economic background, right? The difference is, girls tend to, as we see here, share secrets and tell juicy bits to their friends, and boys tend to, not do so much sharing and juicy bits, but they tend to play a whole lot more. Again, externalizing versus internalizing them. And then popular kids. Yeah, so think back. The popular kids here around the 5th grade are those who are athletic. They're cool, dominant, arrogant, aggressive. Unfortunately, our kids see them as the cool kids. And the ones that are not so cool, the neglected kids, are the ones, that we kind of ignore. Like nobody even notices them, or so unfortunately that's kind of probably the same back in your day, and it's the same today. So bullying, we mentioned before that we're concerned about bullying. Again, bullies tend to pick on kids that are younger than them or smaller than them, something of that nature. And we can bully in a variety of ways. So physical bullying, verbal, or kind of what we call emotional, possibly bullying, saying ugly words to someone. Relational bullying is really, what if you were to go and you were to start spreading lies and bullying in the sense of breaking up your friends' relationships with her other friends because you're jealous of them, right? So relational bullying, and then cyberbullying is a big one that we'll kind of look at soon. So who suffers more? The one who is emotionally bullied by being excluded, maybe from a group, or the one who is physically assaulted or bullied, right? Which one do you think? It is going to be emotional bullying. So that emotional harm leaves more damage to our psyche or our inside than physical, because we heal from those wounds, right? However, we remember these words or that exclusion and we start to doubt ourselves. We start to say, I must be a loser. I'm no good. I'm worth nothing. You know, we start to believe that kind of stuff. And that's when we get into concerns, because we don't want our kids to get to those points of being so depressed we become suicidal. All right, so causes and consequences of bullying. So causes, there's a couple different reasons, unfortunately. Typically, I say that there's issues in the home, because if you raise kids that have good self-esteem, remember we said bullying has to do with the way the bully feels about themselves. They have low self-esteem. So if I raise kids that feel good about themselves, I've been affirming them. I've been telling them their amazing gifts and talents and how much I love them and how nothing they could do and that would never change, right? When I do that, they don't need to go bully other kids, because they don't feel insecure. So a lot of it does come from our family. Another big part of it, though, is that kids like it, unfortunately. When a bully bullies someone and the other kids kind of giggle or laugh or they cheer them on, that's accepting bullies, and we shouldn't do that. Okay? Consequences, lots of different issues. The bully is, again, like I said, they already have low self-esteem issues, so depression. And then how do we get rid of it? It's something that has to be done throughout your entire institution or school, right? So you need to have it from the principal on teachers on down that bullying's not cool. So there's a really good commercial I've seen. It depicts a picture of a school, and there's a hallway with lockers up and down the hallway. And one girl is in her locker and she's listening, and she's overhearing a couple lockers down. She's overhearing some bullies pick on another person, another girl. Right? And so in her mind, she's grappling and she's dealing with, like, what do I do about it? Kind of like. And what the commercial was saying is, teach your kids to do something. And so she goes over and she goes and kind of grabs the other person and kind of tells the other ones, leave her alone. Like, in other words, let's teach our kids to not like bullies and to not approve of them and to stand up for those who are being bullied. And that's something that's going to have to come from the parents and from adults on down to happen. All right, this middle childhood is really a good time for you to kind of start to invest in your child, not just right from wrong. We talked about morality and understanding what is right from wrong. You need to be teaching what's right from wrong for sure. But also, if you care about being compassionate, if you care about social justice, all of those things, this is the real prime time to teach your kids, because they're like a sponge and they can develop those traits. This is actually a picture of my youngest. Gosh, I don't know how old she was here, but her teeth are missing, so she must have been 5 or so. And my youngest, is out of all my kids, she's always had the most compassionate heart. And so we would drive down the road, and we would see people who were hungry or begging. And when we would see that, and we would give them something, she would cry because it would hurt her so much. And she'd go to bed at night and say, Mom, where's that person today? I don't know. I'm so worried about them. And she would just be so sad. And she would say, I want to do something. And I said, really, honey, if you want to do something, I'll look for something to do. And so we called a food bank. And they told us that, during the summer, they needed sandwiches. They said, every weekend on Saturday, we have like a window of time that the homeless come down and they pick up bags of sandwiches and things. And so we could really use donations of sandwiches. And so we made it a family project for the summer, that every Friday night we got together and made sandwiches. And what I did was I made flyers and I advertised to my coworkers and students and everyone. And I had donations of peanut butter and bread and cheese and different things. And so we kind of raised the money to buy all the products. And then Friday night I would line up the kids. We'd all be lined up and we'd do an assembly line with the bread and the meat and everything in the sandwich bag and writing what kind of sandwich it was. And my daughter on Friday night, it was like her most favorite night, right? She was all excited. She was like, yes, we get to make sandwiches. I'm so excited, right? Now, my other 2 kids are a lot older than her. And so they're like teenagers. So they'd be like mumbling, like, I don't understand. It's like Friday night. It's like, I want to go be with my friends. I want to do this. And she's the one that wants to do this thing. So why do we have to do this thing, right? They didn't quite feel the same way as their little sister. I still made them do it, right? Because this was a family project that we were going to do. But it was really her thing to do. And so you can invest, or you can help your child to learn how they have the ability to do great things, even at young ages. And then think of, as they age, how they will think that they can conquer things. All right, so we mentioned kind of before that our kids are maybe not always going to tell you everything, and you need to kind of accept that. So they don't tell adults all the time what's happening. So I can remember when all of my kids, my son wasn't much of a talker, but my girls in particular, you know, I would pick them up from school, we'd be driving, and I'd go, how's your day, how's school? And sometimes they would say, oh yeah, me and you know, Amanda, we just really, you know, something really happened with us today. And I say, oh yeah, what's going on? She'd say, oh, well, I really can't talk about it. You know, it's kind of like between us. And I would, as a parent, you need to say, I totally respect that. I understand. You and Amanda, you know, you have your thing. Okay, I'm here if you ever want to talk about it, but I understand. You need to allow your kids to like not tell you everything, because that gives them, they need to process it and deal with it. They need to know you're here. You're the safe place to come talk about things that they're concerned about, but you're not like forcing them. You're not like that kind of parent that's like, I need to be your friend too, so tell me everything, because that's really not your role at this point. All right, so make sure that you go through your clicker slides so that you can refresh yourself and learn what we're talking about a little more, and I will see you next time for chapter number 14.